Call to order the meeting of the Common Council. It's Monday, February 22nd, 2021, 6 p.m. We're in the council chambers. The agenda has been posted and the media has been notified. Please call roll.
Christopher Frederickson.
Here.
Thomas Barnett.
Here.
Andrew Larson.
Here.
Carrie Michalowski.
Here.
Thomas Kelly.
Here.
Gerald Anderson.
Here.
David Holt.
Here.
Eileen Daniel.
Here.
Ryan Rossing.
Here. All right, we have quorum, so please stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public comment tonight. Has anybody received any public comment? I'm going to use this time just to say that we did receive a fair amount of public comment, not appropriate for council, and it had to do with the Dominion voting machines. That being the case, as long as I'm speaking to the public at this point, please refrain from using profanities when discussing topics of government with both my staff and myself. Your voice is heard, but it's only heard when it's appropriately delivered. So I understand it can be an emotional issue. I understand that there can be a lot of fuel behind it, but please refrain from using profanities and threats for sure. David?
Hi, I don't have any public comments that were sent to me, but I did have an update that Jim Whittinghill of Eagle Waste and Recycling wanted me to relay, and if this would be an appropriate time, I'd like to go ahead and do that.
Could you state his name again real quick?
Jim Whittinghill at Eagle Waste and Recycling a couple meetings ago.
Okay.
He came and gave a presentation. He invited each of us to go take a tour of the recycling facility. I did that this morning at 9 a.m. It's a very interesting. It's not as long as some other tours I've taken. It only took about an hour or so, but it's a very interesting facility to see what happens and why it's important to follow guidelines in terms of what goes in the recycling, how it goes in the recycling, and what goes in the refuge. The two things that he wanted me to relay, other than just simply welcoming anybody to go ahead and take that tour, was a clarification, because I was a little confused. So I asked him a little bit more about this. We talked about it earlier, that I had seen reports that even though we're delivering recycling in the last few years, it actually isn't being recycled. It's just being sent to landfills anyway. He said that that's not true, but that was something very specific. It is. So plastics that are rated 3 through 7. So number 1, plastics being like the drinking water bottles there. Number 2 being like a milk jug, right? Past that 3 through 7, because those had been being sent overseas for recycling and they no longer are, those actually can't be recycled. And so if you put them in recycling, it makes it more difficult for them, because they have to take time to extract that out. And we want to help them be as efficient as possible, I think, and I would agree with this, so that they can keep our rates down, right? And the second thing is that a reminder that they need all of the recycling to go into the bins loose, not in bags. If they get it in a bag, they have to actually throw it out. It's just like throwing it in the garbage.
Single stream.
I'm sorry?
Single stream.
Yes, exactly. So that was it. I did want to say it was a very interesting tour. I recommend it.
That closes public comments if nobody else has any. All right. Moving forward, presentation, wastewater lift station projects. Jim.
Good evening. So about a year ago, I brought to your attention the need to upgrade 2 of our wastewater pumping stations. Those were Spring Lake Number 1 and Coon Street. These 2 projects were put out for bid by Town and Country Engineering. Sable Mechanical out of Fond du Lac was awarded the bid. They were the low bidder on the project. And they handled the upgrades at both the lift station projects. Thanks, Tara. Project goals. They were to upgrade both pumping stations to provide reliable operation and aid in future maintenance activities. The second goal was the addition of a valve vault at the Spring Lake location to provide code compliance and also to provide a dry location to house the check valves and isolation valves. And lastly, to continue to follow the 5-year capital improvement plan, working towards staying ahead of an aging sewer infrastructure. Next slide, please. So the first project we're going to look at is Spring Lake Number 1. Spring Lake Number 1 was one of our older stations, dating back with the controls and one of the 2 pumps dating back to 1976. The scope of the project was replacement of both pumps, pump bases and rails, replacement of all existing piping, removal of the isolation and check valves from the wet well, like I mentioned earlier, moving those to a dry, more accessible location. Complete controls upgrade, and also in addition of a standby generator connection. In the past, we could have some pretty lengthy outages in the Spring Lake Loop, so never having a generator connection at the station left us dead in the water during power outages. So now when we have an outage out there, we can take our portable generator out there, plug it in, and be back in service again. So this slide, the picture on the left is pre-project. If you notice that large soft maple tree in the background, number 1, that was right in the spot where the additional valve vault went, so the tree was an issue. Also, the tree roots were an issue through the years. Those roots found their way into the wet well at this station. The picture on the right, you can see a pretty sizable root curtain in the corner of that picture. That's actually growing in through a lateral service connection that came into that wet well. So every year or 2, we would do a confined space entry with the battery-powered Sawzall and actually get in that wet well with chest waders and cut the roots out. So the removal of that tree was really welcome to the utility.
Jim, did you cut the tree? You guys get the tree down yourself, or did you hire somebody to do that?
We contracted that out.
Who did that?
Tip Top Tree Service.
Okay, thanks.
So the picture on the left is the existing wet well. You can see the condition of the piping is in pretty rough shape. The valves are actually below that piping, about at the water surface. So, you know, working on the valves in there was pretty difficult. And they were corroded to the point where we couldn't even open them up to service them anymore. So it was really time for replacement. And you can see the picture on the right is all the piping that was removed from that wet well as part of the project. Next slide, Tara. So for any of these lift station projects, we end up setting up, or the contractor ends up setting up a bypass pump. And what we do with that is we bypass all the wastewater flow around the station during the project. So we go in and we plug the sewer upstream of the lift station. The picture on the left with the green hose going down into the manhole, that would be the pump suction. So we pull out of the upstream manhole during the project. We bypass that wastewater on the surface around the station, and the picture on the right shows the bypass connection. which that pump then discharges into, eliminating the need for the station during the work. Next slide, please. And like I had mentioned, one of the issues with this station was that the isolation valves and the check valves were in the wet well. So part of this project was the addition of the valve vault that you see in these pictures. And that got the valves out of the wet well into a dry area, which makes them much easier to service when needed. So we're looking at here, again, the wet well before the project, and on the right is the wet well after the project, with the new pumps, new pump rails, and you can't see much of the piping because there's not a lot left in there. Most of it went to that new valve vault. Next slide, please. The controls. The controls were way past their useful life, dating back to the mid-70s. So the old control panel on the left, new on the right, and like I'd mentioned earlier, with the new control panel, we were able to add a generator connection so we can provide power during outages out there. So there's a lot of work going on in a pretty small footprint for these projects. There's electricians on site, pipe fitters, in this case, a fabricator, plumbers, and not to mention the excavation work that took place at the Spring Lake project as well. So it's a pretty compact site and there's a lot going on. The Spring Lake project started the first week of January and was complete by the end of the first week in January. It was complete Friday, January 8th. There is some restoration work to be completed once the spring thaw comes. Little yard work for one of the neighbors there. And speaking of neighbors, I'd like to thank the homeowners on either side of this project for their patience through the 4 days that this project went on. There was a lot going on there in those 4 days. Moving on to Coon Street. Coon Street was a similar project. One of the differences was there was no excavation required for Coon Street. So these guys were in and out for the Coon Street project in less than 3 days. So they came in, they worked some long hours, set up lights for nighttime work, and did a great job and got this thing knocked out, did a quality job in a really short amount of time. The Coon Street project, again, required replacement of both pumps, pump bases, rails and discharge piping, the replacement of all piping and valves in the existing valve vault, and upgrading the controls, and also we upgraded the voltage that was supplied to the station for more efficient pump operation. There was also an addition of a slide gate valve on the inlet to the wet well, and we'll talk about that in a couple slides. So the picture on the left, the far back part of the picture is the existing controls. The next structure in front of that is the wet well, and the structure closest to the front of the picture is the access hatch for the valve vault. Coon Street collects all the wastewater between the hospital and Home Depot. It's our third highest flow station. It really handles a good piece of the north end of town. So it's a really important station to keep reliable operation at. The controls that you see in the background dated back to the 1990s. The pumps were last rebuilt in the early 2000s. And I talked about this station being a high flow station. On an average day, the pumps can start and stop up to 200 times at this station. So you start adding that up day after day, year after year. The starts and stops really accumulate. So, I mean, things wear out, controls wear out. Really important station to keep functional. Just a picture of some of the piping and structure that came out. On the left there, you can see it's pretty corroded, pretty rough shape. In fact, the contractor found that some of the stuff actually just fell right out. It was at the end of its life, without a doubt. You can see here, there's some of the new pieces and parts ready to go down into the wet well for installation. On the right picture, it kind of gives you a little bit of an idea for how deep this station is. This station's 30 feet deep. So I talked about the addition of a slide gate valve. When we do have to do an entry into the station for maintenance, we were never able to stop the flow coming into it. And the flow actually comes in just above your head down there. So it was a pretty bad environment to try to work in. So part of this project, we added, or the contractor added, a slide gate valve to the inlet coming in so we can close off the flow. And then it's not like working on a waterfall down there. Make maintenance activities much more safe and efficient. This is the existing valve vault, old piping on the left, new piping on the right. The existing piping we could not service. The fasteners and hardware were so corroded we couldn't get a wrench on them. It was really good to get these valves changed out. When material gets hung up in these valves, we do have to open them up to clean them out, and luckily that didn't happen before the project was complete. So again, more talk about the valves, but you can see the old on the left and the new on the right. Again, you can see the bypass pump set up on the left slide. We did close down Coon Street for 2 days because we ran our bypass discharge down Coon Street to the next gravity sewer that we could get to. The picture on the right is showing a tech from the controls company starting up the electrical panel. All of our stations communicate with radio telemetry back to the treatment plant. This allows us to monitor pump trends, wet well levels, and any alarms that we may have to attend to. A tech from the controls supplier was on site for both project startups to ensure proper communication with the treatment plant and proper controls operation. Talked a little bit before about doing an entry in the station to do some cleaning and maintenance. The picture on the right shows one of our guys suited up, and we just actually had brought him out of there. We knocked the big chunks off him on the way up. So, but this addition of the slide gate valve is really going to help us in maintenance operations in the future. You can go to the next slide, Tara. So overall, the city has 20 lift stations. It's really important to keep working toward improvements to keep the collection system up to date and reliable. Some projects we're looking at for 2021 include pump replacements at Highway 8 West Station, pump replacements at Timber Heights Lift Station, and lastly, pump replacements at Highway 8 and River Road Lift Station. We were also looking at what our options may be for Kemp West Lift Station. We'll know more about that as time goes on here, and we'll take a look at the best option for upgrades out there as well.
Questions?
I just want to say that I saw firsthand some of those pump stations
Yes.
before the repairs, and I just want to say that they look fantastic now, and thank you guys for all your hard work on all that. That it looks great, and I'm glad that we can be proactive in getting this stuff fixed.
And I'm glad I have the options and ability to be proactive on this stuff. It is an important piece of our system that nobody really knows about.
Can you give us a confidence score when it comes to now having a proactive pump station replacement and working through some of those things prior, what the difference was prior to replacing these and then now.
Well, these were obviously two of the stations I was the most concerned with. So, I mean, these stations went from probably a 1 to 2 to a 10.
Right.
And overall, I would say the system is probably about an 8. Well, I'd give it a 7. The more I think about it, it may decrease even
You don't
more.
want to be in front of us asking for something. What the heck happened to the 7? All right. Excellent. Any other questions? Thank you, Jim. That was very informative. I appreciate it. Mayor's comments. We're going to skip those tonight. I've got too many. Just kidding. Meeting minutes. Approval of February 8th, 2021. Council meeting minutes. It's page 3 in your packet. I'll accept a motion. Anybody appreciate the fact?
Mikulowski, I'll make a motion to accept the February 8th council meeting minutes.
Larson, second.
Anderson, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? One thing I'd like to do is applaud our staff as far as getting these things out. We had an agenda by far in advance at this time. We did have to amend it for work product that we got done, completed. But I really appreciate the staff working on that. Anyway, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Reports from boards, commissions, and committees. There was a report of the January 28th, 2021 tree board. It was on page 6 in your packet. Tree board's hard at work.
I'll make a motion to accept the report as presented.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second.
Larson, second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Tree board report from January 28th is it's passed. Introduction of new business. Mayoral appointment of Tom Wadick as the city inspector.
I will make a motion to approve the appointment of Tom Wadick as city inspector.
Larson, second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Resolution 2021-6, initial resolution approving the vacation of Hill Street. This was handed out as an additional sheet. It is some housekeeping as far as the property that was to be developed. There was a road on it that really never came to fruition, and we just need to abandon it. Is that correct? I will accept a motion.
I will make a motion to put Hill Street on vacation. Approval of resolution 2021-6 as presented.
Larson, second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Gerald?
Is this the whole block from Boyce to Oneida, or just the portion that borders on that parcel?
Yeah. Could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, sorry. Thanks for the patience. Does this cover the whole block? I assume it was originally platted from Boyce to Oneida, I believe.
Yeah.
Are we vacating all of that, or just the portion alongside the parcel to be developed?
Okay, what this is that on the original plat, there was a road that was basically stubbed into this lot. It didn't go all the way through. And as such, we're just vacating the entire roadway that was on the original plat. It was a road, the way it was on the plat, it couldn't have been developed anyway. It was a substandard road. It was, I don't know how it got there, but that's how you have to clean up your records, and this is just a process of cleaning up records. We look for these, obviously, in the city. Every time we find one, we try to clean them up. But this is not atypical. I want the council to know that somebody did a plat many, many years ago, and they thought this is what they were going to do, and they thought this is how it was going to develop. And so they dedicated a roadway, but it's never been developed. So this is a road that would go basically from somewhere to nowhere. So that's why
David?
we're getting rid of it.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify, just for the public who's not seeing this, that the whereas clauses actually stipulate that within the boundaries of the plots that we're talking about.
All right, so I'll accept the sorry.
I also wanted to point out, this is just the first reading. There will be a public hearing and a second reading before it is passed, correct?
Yeah, let me just continue to tell you what happens next. This is a long process. I mean, it's one of the more obnoxious processes to do a very simple thing. Because now it has to go to the planning commission, and that's where all the detail will be discussed. And then the planning commission basically has to recommend it, after a public hearing, has to recommend it back to the council for final action. But this is giving the planning commission, because we own the land, this is how we give the planning commission permission to go ahead and look at vacation of it. So all we're doing is asking the planning commission to look at vacating it and then come back to us with a recommendation after a public hearing.
Do you have to read this then, or no?
So you will
No.
see this again and again.
Because it'll go through planning commission, that's where the hearing will be. All right.
Did we
Moving
vote?
on.
Did we,
We didn't vote. Do
We have a
not?
motion
We do have a motion.
All
I
right.
made the motion.
and discussion. And now, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Ayes have it. It'll move on to planning commission. Authorizing to execute the work order number 3 with MD Rolfers Consulting. This is page 7 in your packet.
I'll just briefly state that this is a no-cost item, as you probably saw by reading the item in your packet. This will tie up the loose ends that are outstanding with the consultant on the zoning rewrite project. It's our hope that the Planning Commission will come together maybe next week and make some progress on this, ultimately making their recommendation to the full council for adoption of the zoning rewrite. And so this, again, because of some nuances with the original agreement that the city had with Rofers, we're bringing this back forward for transparency purposes and certainly for your recommendation to execute the agreement, or the work order 3, I guess we're calling it.
I'll accept the motion.
I will make a motion to execute work order number 3 with MD Roffers Consulting.
Rossing, second.
There's a motion and a second. As Zach said, this is just cleaning up the extension and some of the other things we're doing to get this project to fulfillment. It is no cost. Any further discussion?
I will just add that Alder Barnett had mentioned at the last meeting about looking at our ordinances, so this is going to be a big chunk of, I mean, it's the entire zoning code, so be ready for some table or bedside reading once this process gets concluded with the Planning Commission review.
We'll be having a
because
quiz day.
Yeah, it's like that big.
You don't need to memorize it, you just need to kind of be
Know how to use it and quick.
comfortable with the city having that code, so.
Yeah, it's pretty clear and concise as far as that goes. I'm 3/4 of the way going through it, and as I do that, I realize the minutia, the details I don't need to have. I need to know how to find them, is what it amounts to, but it is cleaning up a substantial amount. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Agreement with Bayside Printing for utility billing mailing services. This is an issue that our staff has found some cost savings and some definite time savings with our bills and stuffing them and printing them at a certain time. The suggestion comes highly recommended, yeah, from the staff that's taking care of this.
I will make a motion to approve agreement with Bayside Printing for utility bill mailing services.
Barnett, second.
There's a motion, and a second. Any further discussion?
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
So, What's the percentage of time that was spent on doing this? And was this by the utility billing clerk, or who did this work?
Correct. It was the utility billing clerk. If I said, Wendy, do you have the approximation of it? Yeah, it's at least a day every 3 weeks to a month.
Send a file to somebody else that can take the time to print it, stuff it, add a sucker to it, and then take it to the post office, saving her quite a few hours of work. And we are already like short-staffed.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell council that what this does is it frees up a lot of our tasks and duties to move other things around. So it's very advantageous at this point to look and clean up some of those places. So as we deal with staff, we have a good, accurate idea of how many hours, days, / whatever they're dealing with things. Eileen?
Do we offer paperless billing at all right now?
Yes.
We do?
Yeah, I believe it's online.
Well, I know I can pay my bill online, but I don't know if I can see my bill, and you know what I'm saying, get an email with my bill.
Correct.
Rather than having it stuffed in an envelope.
The other portion, even with the water bill that right now we're going through, and this is on a side note, is how to communicate with our taxpayers or our utility users. So we give out a fair amount of information, whether it's when DNR does the clean water or anything else, we use those stuffers. So to switch away from that would be...
Well, you can include that with an email.
Yeah,
It would
correct.
just be an attachment or just part of the email. Because I think if we move to paperless, we can save even more money.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, I'm all for streamlining stuff and cost savings. The reason I asked for the amount of time that it was spent on this is that I understand that the City Hall here employees they're doing a lot of different tasks. I just wanted to make sure that the cost savings was effective and that we aren't taking something away without still leaving more, enough work to do for the utility billing clerk. So it's an employee that we're paying to do a job, and I'm sure Wendy.
I'll let Wendy answer that question.
I've heard. I don't want to be chastised. I don't want to be chastised, but I know that you guys have a lot of stuff to do. If you're gonna chew on me, stand up and do it at the podium, though, Wendy.
All right. Carrie?
I just wanted to make a comment that I'm all for, maybe sending an electronic version, but we have a population that's pretty senior and they don't all have internet or capabilities of, getting electronic mail. So we still need to have that paper option.
Eileen?
Absolutely. I'm just saying that an option, giving our
Correct.
customers the option to either have paperless or
We look for
mailed.
efficiencies. I can promise you that in our work staff right now and look for ways to do that. This is one that presented to us that already is a step in the right direction. Does that mean it's the end all? Absolutely not. But thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed? Ayes have it.
I got a
Motion
question. Do we have to? This is a money thing. Do you want
Roll call.
to do a roll call on that rather than a?
It's a cost savings though too, so I don't know if it's, yeah, we'll do roll call. I'm okay with it. It's just a movement from labor to whatever, so it's a budgeted expense, but go ahead and call roll, Teresa.
Thomas Kelly. Ryan Rossing.
Aye.
Eileen Daniel.
Aye.
Carrie Mikulowski.
Aye.
Gerald Anderson.
Aye.
Thomas Barnett.
Aye.
David Holt.
Aye.
Andrew Larson.
Aye.
Ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you. Discussion regarding the Downtown Works Revolving Loan Fund. You all received a updated letter in your mailbox, understanding the position where we start on this, and I'll let Zach speak to it just for a little bit.
Sure, I just wanted to give you a snapshot of the history. Of course, there's a lot more documentation and more information in case you want to ask those questions, but I don't think it's really relevant in that a lot of what the current status of the fund is not representative of necessarily the past. So it gives us a good opportunity. There hasn't been any active loan requests in the last calendar year, but we're anticipating some activity. In fact, I met with one of the prospective applicants today, and we expect her to file an application once we get kind of our house in order as to what are we allowing people to apply for, what's the loan criteria that we'll set, and then any sort of review committee and structure to review and approve those loans. So I think at this point, we're just looking for direction, and if you have any specific thoughts to that, but like what sort of policy level pieces do you recommend incorporating as we try to pull some pieces together? Not that we're going to scrap the entirety of it, but there are a lot of elements that are not relevant anymore from based upon the previous activity in the loan fund. There are active loans that people are paying on. The good thing is, I would say every loan is active even in the midst of the pandemic when a lot of people sought loan deferrals. It's, to my knowledge, there hasn't been anybody that asked for a delay in their repayment schedule, so that's good news. But I think at this point, we just want to make sure we tighten up what people can apply for. Facade is really a top item, I think, that can really benefit the downtown. It's not something that people generally will spend a lot of their own money on. So if they can apply to the program and get some nice payment terms, for them to cash flow those improvements to the exterior of their buildings, that seems to be a real common one when you look at downtown loans of this nature or programs of this nature. And I know that there had been some kind of in that arrangement as well. So looking for any sort of feedback or any thoughts from anybody on that.
Ryan?
Yeah, I know there was some question from some of the past members, one in particular that was wondering the makeup of the group. I guess the people that were on the committee, and I'm not sure, I don't want to put the mayor on the spot at this point, but is there, are we moving forward with that as it was? Are we going to need to add somebody to that? And what's the makeup? I was told that there was some documents that were found, so I think that should be clarified so that everybody's on the same page with the original intent of the group and what can or can't be done. So I don't know if anybody has any information on that recently.
Yeah, first of all, when looking over the documents, we don't exist as the original loan was set up. So that it needs to be cleaned up as part of it. And I guess what we're doing today is asking for that input you have on that as to how to get it completely functioning correctly. It can function right now with the committee, based on the past, even when it said in documents that 2 were appointed from each group. If you followed then the meeting minutes, they were different people each time. So there was a fair amount of things inconsistent with what the original document said to what we were doing. So having this stop part, and it's not necessarily a stop because it can happen in quick order, to say it can function, so that we gain clarity with what we're doing with it. I don't like going willy-nilly, yet at the same time, that's been the way that this is somewhat run for years when you look back through the documented records, who showed up at a meeting, how they gave out the loan, when they gave it out. So just being clear with that. So that's what we're asking from council, is that direction if you have feelings that way. We can get it functioning, the money's there, like right away. Like he said, he met with the girl that's already gonna apply. But yet if we want to, it's kind of like the Police and Fire Commission, if we wanna take that moment in time to set policy, like we're supposed to make sure we're clear in what we're doing, this is a good time. Any other questions? Thomas?
Yeah, this is actually one of the very first things that I asked Zach to look into. And I think that if you're looking for direction on how to get this up and running in a more efficient way, would it be prudent to have a work session on that?
Perhaps. I think it'd be good to, if you have any strong feelings around what those funds should be directed for, those types of things, we can put together a proposal for you that brings some of the elements of the past that seem to be relevant in terms of loan review structure and criteria for how much somebody needs to put in of their own money. I mean, there's some elements kind of on the financing side that we'll probably need to just put together to make sure it's not those types of details. But in case of a work session, sure. Can have a discussion.
So how about this? Why don't we, for now, do what we did with the other stuff, and each council member sends you their thoughts and ideas on how they could get this to work and all that, and then put something together to present to us.
That works.
Yeah.
Yeah? All right.
When it comes to work product, one of the confusing parts is not given direction, and or the direction's been just all over, that you look historically to find out what it is. How do we move forward with
Right.
that? So that's what this is basically, if we're going to, Police and Fire Commission, it took him 4 times to understand even what council wanted with 3 different conversations till we got to product.
Right.
It's understandable that work sessions happen in different areas, whether they encompass a night or not a night, who shows up, who doesn't show up. Collection of council sometimes is like herding cats.
Sure.
I don't mean that in a bad way, it just is. Because their opinions might not be they have an opinion. Yet, at the same time, when informed, they might have an opinion. Or one of their constituents can have an opinion at that point when it comes up out in front of the people. So anyway, this is just basically the starts of that. It's not that it doesn't function now. If that was the case, it just wouldn't function with direction that we understand.
So does that have to be in the form of a motion, or?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more
believe you
just
can-
open discussion, you know, want to
Okay.
make sure, put you
I
on
would-
notice
I would,
that this is going to happen.
I'd also like to say if any of the council members are looking for, like history information and stuff like that, you can talk to Jim Hext or Will at the music shop. They were pretty informative to me about the history
Yeah.
of this revolving loan fund.
They were
Or
very
you can talk to
helpful.
Zach. He's also very informed on this stuff too.
Yeah.
So I definitely encourage my fellow council members to really find out what this is all about, because I do think this is important for the small business owners in town here, because this can help a lot of people, especially in the pandemic we're in right now. There's some business owners that I know personally that are struggling just to pay their rent every month, and this could definitely help them out, so.
I would ask that whoever, if Zach or somebody that sends out an email, put some categories and a little bit more descriptors on what you're looking for from the council, so that the council isn't just, oh, I forgot what we talked about at that meeting. And so you can answer certain questions about what you're looking for to decide about the committee or the fund.
Sure thing.
Excellent, moving on. Consider the approval of submitting Monaco Street and Boyce Drive LRIP substitution?
Yep.
All right, I'll let you speak on that, because it's obviously
You probably
drawing a
have
blank.
seen, well, we talked about both these streets in the capital improvements plan, 5-year plan discussion a couple of meetings ago. And essentially, this is getting your initial approval to request the DOT's permission to be able to use what was surplus monies when Boyce Drive was reconstructed, and to be able to reassign them to the Monaco Street. And why we're recommending Monaco Street is we also received a DOT grant for a portion of Monaco Street, basically a mill and overlay. But at this point, kind of the consensus between Town and Country, our engineer, as well as staff, is that we can do a more substantial project, and probably should do a more substantial project at Monaco than simply a mill and overlay. That surface and subsurface is shot, for lack of a better word, and we need to, in this case, we'll buy ourselves some more time before that ultimately needs to get reconstructed. So at this point, we're recommending the substitution, so basically taking the surplus from the Boyce Drive project and then adding it into the Monaco Street, and then we would be able to execute on both of those before the June 30th deadline in which the DOT funds expire.
I'll take a motion first.
I'll go ahead and make that motion to approve the substitution of Monaco Street as a Boyce Drive LRIP substitution.
Do I have a second?
Larson, second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further
There's
discussion?
more.
Gerald?
How much money is involved?
So the total project for Monaco is, original project estimate was about 75,000. So by moving the balance over, Mark, was about 25,000. We got the project just about to 100,000, I believe. So, yeah, so about $100,000 all in versus about 75 originally. So it does not change the cost share. I mean, there still is a cost share that's associated with the original Monaco Street. It's just we're expanding the scope and bringing in those funds to assist in that project. Looking to Mark if there's any other
Anything else?
explanation necessary.
Please call roll.
Andrew Larson.
Aye.
Thomas Kelly. Eileen Daniel.
Aye.
Thomas Barnett.
Aye.
Gerald Anderson.
Aye.
Carrie Mikulowski.
Aye.
Ryan Rossing.
Aye.
David Holt.
Aye.
Ayes have it, motion carries. G, discuss St. Patrick's Day Parade. This was moved to streets and other places to accept events and move them forward, yet with COVID, council's had a fair amount of weigh-in on events as far as that point because of safety. I did run it past our chiefs and ask for their description, and Tom, if you want to get up and speak, and or Chief Guthier, but otherwise really what I'm doing is looking for your support on this, is if we have the parade, do you support that? It's been a year. We closed St. Patrick's Day Parade. Our people have had 1 year now to live in COVID conditions, to make decisions, to be adults, to wash their hands, to wear their masks, do what they feel need and necessity. During that time, I don't think there's been any huge surprise, mass outbreaks here because of poor behavior or anything else. So I would suggest moving forward with allowing the parade. Now, that's just going to be my suggestion, but we'll open up for discussion, and I'll accept a motion to support that if that's the case.
Barnett, I'll make a motion to support having a St. Patrick's Day Parade from 2021.
Mikulowski, second.
So there's a motion and a second. Discussion.
Yeah, I would like to get Chief Guthier's view on this from a public safety point of view,
Absolutely.
if he doesn't mind it.
He's walking slow.
I think that the event is scheduled for Saturday, March 13th. The actual date of St. Patrick's Day is Wednesday, the 17th. There's going to be a large crowd out anyways that night. I'm planning on having additional staff on, and so I see no reason not to have the parade.
Tom, anything you'd like to add as far as public safety?
I would agree, no matter what we do or don't do in our community, people are going to be out in large crowds. I'd rather see us do something that's organized, that we have a little bit of control over, and support our community.
Absolutely. I think celebrations are in need at this point, yet at the same time, I believe us advocating for social distancing, advocating for those things, and people at this point just understand where to go or not to go. Anybody who's upset at something is because they made a choice that way, one way or the other. So I believe we're just putting it back in our constituents' hands to make the right choices. Tom?
Have we heard anything from the organizers as far as any protocols they're gonna have in place to keep the
No,
audience safe?
we get the event application, and it goes through fire chief and chief. It goes through Dan with streets as far as and things of that nature. If we wanted to add any constrictions that way or restrictions that way, we could. But
So we're giving them permission to apply.
no, they already applied.
They already have.
We're basically I'm the last office it would go past to say no to. And what I'm doing is giving council the opportunity to speak up also if they had some big issues with it.
Got it.
Tom?
I agree with you, Mayor. I think, a year is long enough. I know it's still out there. Everyone knows it is. I think people have gotten into a rhythm or a habit of wearing their masks if they choose to wear a mask, and social distancing and washing hands. I like to say, I'd like to think that people are responsible. Obviously, you're going to have your exceptions to the rule, but I mean, you're going to have that anywhere, anytime, in any city at this point. I think the majority, though, are knowledgeable in how to take care of themselves and others. And if there's an uncomfortable feeling about it, they have the choice to, be responsible for themselves and choose not to attend. I would encourage everyone to attend and get out and have a good time. I think it's important not only for our community, but for a lot of mental health right now, because there's a lot of people that are getting extremely depressed, and mental health issues are on the rise. And I think this would be good for our community.
I'm going to just share a personal note. I returned to church after a fair amount of time away, and it's a difference when you experience people close together. We've even had the object to be able to do it. It did my heart good to watch Gerald come into City Hall today, even if it's in an office and it's protected, yet that laying eyes on him just to know he's upright or anything else, those are good things.
Thanks. I'd agree as well. I also think that people do need events, and this one is a particularly good one given the time of year. And my experience is that it's a much more accessible event to social distance at than, say, the 4th of July, where it's a lot larger crowds. So I think, I think that obviously I would personally encourage people to be prudent in their decisions, but I think that the city should support this moving forward.
Tom Kelly, because you're Irish, I think you should abstain from this.
I have a piece of good news, though. Oneida County has gone from extremely high risk to very high risk. So we've dropped from extremely to very.
Excellent.
As far as the risk factor.
I would like to do it
That's
also
good news.
to celebrate the fact that our flu season's at a record low.
Yeah,
So, I
because
mean,
everybody's taking
as far as
care
that
of
goes, nobody's been sick with the flu, and I'm super excited, and we should celebrate that. Gerald?
I just wondered if we can approve it with a stipulation that we encourage the organizers to encourage people to be safe about it.
Yeah. We will
That
have
would be part of the advertising.
Yeah, we also have extra police officers out there that will encourage the same thing. So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Update on the administrator search. It is almost through completion. You will get the final reports in closed session as far as that goes. Closed session, if necessary, to convene into closed session per Wisconsin State Statutes 19.851E to deliberating and discussing a negotiation of investment of public lands and the conducting of specific public business related to the management contract for 2021 Northwood Golf Course. If necessary, to convene into closed session per Wisconsin State Statute 19.851C to discuss candidates and contract terms for positions of city administrator who is a public employee of which the governmental body has jurisdiction to exercise responsibility.
I'll make a motion to go into closed session.
I will second that motion to go into closed session for both the stated purposes.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Please call roll.
Eileen Daniels.
Aye.
David Holt.
Aye.
Thomas Kelly. Ryan Rossing.
Aye.
Thomas Barnett.
Aye.
Gerald Anderson.
Aye.
Andrew Larson.
Aye.
Carrie Mikulowski.
Aye.
All right. We'll join in closed session in 2 minutes. We have to switch Zoom for Gerald because he goes from a public to a closed session Zoom. We'll return to open session. Reporting on Wisconsin State Statute 19.851E with the contract with Northwood Golf Course. There's nothing to report at this time. Reporting on and or a motion from the second item on here. Oh,
Rossing, I'd like to make a motion to direct Human Resources employee Doreen St. Ange to negotiate a contract with our lead candidate with the assistance of our attorney to vet or approve the contract agreement.
Holt, second.
there's a motion and a second. Eileen,
When will that be brought back to council?
upon completion.
Do we
And
have,
if it doesn't work out.
right, is there a, like, at the next council meeting, should we have an answer, or the second one in March?
All
What can we
negotiations, a contract, if you looked at our police and fire negotiations, took 8 months. And I'm not
Right.
saying it'll take 8 months. You guys gave us the deadline of March 1st. That's what we were hoping for. I
Okay.
believe, all three candidates would be available for those negotiations right now.
So we should have an answer by our first meeting in March?
Correct.
Thank you.
The only thing I would point out is, if you're not going to be in the area, please let us know. Because if everything goes the way Doreen and I have thought about it, we might even call a special council meeting. If that's okay with the council. I mean, obviously you can say no.
Yeah.
But that's the thought pattern we've had.
Once again, cost was a key factor when you gave me the directive, was figuring out how to do it the best we can, and we did, and then therefore moving it forward that way. Doreen, you'd like to speak? Yeah.
That's part of the vetting out with the candidates as well, and that first interview session I had with them privately is, what are your expectations? Because what we don't want to do is, they want the $1 million compensation, we're only doing a half, so just as a funny scenario situation. So I vetted all the candidates out, I know what they're looking for, I know what we're willing to offer, so the negotiation from this point on, once you selected who you select, should not take that long. So,
Correct.
and typically we don't want to go more than 5 days out, and we shouldn't have to, because we've already vetted all the candidates out. So this will be the easy part of the process now.
Great.
So,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? There are none, thank you. Future agenda items are listed. Yes.
I did want to ask that the park master plan has been on the agenda now for several meetings, and we still haven't had it brought forward.
Yeah, I spoke to Zach this afternoon about that, just as far as moving that along. He said, yeah, it should be ready by the next agenda.
Okay, just because, we're getting into building season
Correct.
before we know it, and so we want to make sure we've got everything ready to rock and roll.
Absolutely, we have some exciting things happening, so.
Yeah,
we're gonna get-
one thing I'd add to that is, be prepared to do some reading before your next council meeting, because with the Hodag plan, you're gonna have to look at it, and hopefully we're gonna have all that out. And there's gonna be a lot of nuances, so please don't come to the meeting and suddenly look at it for the very first time, because there's just way too many nuances in it to look at it during the meeting.
And again, I'd like to applaud Teresa in getting the agenda out early, so we have those things that we understand are coming. So we're doing a good job.
Amen.
Andrew?
I'd like to get an update on Heel Creek from Jeremy.
Absolutely. I think he puts it in his bi-weekly briefer, which is, so next one would be the beginning agenda, so it should be in there. Some of the stuff is just unable to move
Well,
forward.
there's been some talk with it, so just to get the ball rolling on it again.
Sure.
So
Absolutely. I'll ask him to add that as far as this thing, and he can stand up.
he said he was going to talk about it tomorrow at their meeting
Perfect.
or whatever, so.
Perfect. If there's nothing else, we are adjourned.